Okay, it's done. Okay, so we're on live. Oh, I forgot to make myself a co-host. Can you do it for me, Bob?
Sure.
Thank you.
And did Kevin come in for, okay, great. Hi, Kevin.
No, actually, hi, Bob. I was going to push the stream live, but Kim did it already.
Yes.
So I'm going to be leaving him.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right.
No worries. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm going to put up my title slide here for, well, until people come in, okay?
Okay.
Oh, now they start coming in. Okay, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Sandra, Robert.
Hi.
Laura, Terry, Gloria, Marianne, Mom, huh? Okay. All right, Hank. So I understand some people just take classes on Sunday. Are you a Sunday only person? Anybody here that only takes, or you take classes all week long? All week long. Okay. All right. That's good to know. Okay. I'm doing two classes today. This class is on understanding home networks, and we'll take a look at a number of things. And then I do another class today at specific time for me. So it's 10 a.m. Pacific time, and I'm doing one at 11:30 on virtual backgrounds, Zoom virtual backgrounds for beginners. Okay. Some of you anybody signed up for that one too as well today? Okay. So if I see you again and I don't recognize you, please don't be offended. Sometimes I just don't recognize the faces. I'm wearing my Get Set Up shirt. Okay, so we're getting some clothing, attire, but I have my Get Set Up logo in the background as well. We have Kim on chat, who's available for help with anybody that's having any technical questions or anything about Zoom and Get Set Up. We'll try and answer and help you out if you need assistance with getting a copy of the recording or anything like that as well. So let me just see who's gotten in here so far, and we'll get started. I'm just curious if people think about, I'm going to run through a few slides, and then after the agenda, I want to pause and see if you have any specific questions about home networks that you're hoping we'll cover today. I don't know if we can cover all of them. This is kind of a basics class to introduce you to home networks and help you learn a little bit about technology, because I like making technology easier for people to understand. If you see me occasionally moving my head from side to side, is because I'm looking at different parts of my screen so that I can see what's going on with the meeting. There's actually a lot we keep track of in a meeting while we're in a meeting as well. So it's pretty interesting, and my network's working today, so hopefully everything will stay on, and we won't have any technical difficulties or anything like that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and show a few slides for you to kind of help get things kicked off, and then we'll pause for a few questions. So this is about home networks explained. You could call it home network basics or introduction to home networks or any number of things that you might want to. I'm based in Seal Beach, California. I was born in Chicago. I went to college out in the West Coast. My dad was a school teacher in the city of Chicago, and we took Route 66 out from Chicago to visit my grandmother on the West Coast every summer to visit. And I really wanted to come out to the West Coast. So I came out to college here and stayed here, worked in the tech industry. I've owned my own internet company. So I've worked as an internet service provider. Then so about 2007, started doing adult education and training. And I like making technology a little bit easier for people to understand. It's a tool. It shouldn't be difficult, but a lot of times technical people make it very difficult. So see some hands up there, right? And so I do my best, and so we're going to learn from each other. Some people help. Every class I do, somebody's got a good idea that helps other people out sometimes. You can request a recording at help@getsetup.io, as Kim has posted in chat. If you don't see it in chat, just send an email after class at help@getsetup.io. Anytime you need help with anything with Get Set Up, that's it. If you're joining by live stream, and I believe we're live streaming today, we encourage you to join us at getsetup.io, register for an account, they're free, and sign up for classes so you can join the way you see other participants doing. And even though we might mention products or services in our classes, we're not paid to promote anything. We're just offering them up as a suggestion or part of our education and training. Okay, so today we're going to look at a few things. We're going to look at some network ABCs. We're going to learn some vocabulary that may help you impress your friends, of course, because that's why we want to learn new terms, but help you understand things a little bit better. We'll learn a little bit about why networks, what networks are used for, and why they're so valuable. We'll talk about these things like routers and Wi-Fi a lot and help you understand them. And then I'll offer some product suggestions and some ideas on what happens when you have problems with your network as well. So let me pause slides for a little bit and just see what kinds of questions anybody might have. And I'm going to use an older technology. I'm going to start recording because I didn't hit record, sorry. And we're going to use an older technology, a pen and paper, to write down questions. Okay, so Carol, you've got your hand up. Go ahead. And
I always hear about these extenders, like if you want to increase your megabytes per minute or something and get better reception. I have a friend in Argentina and we do WhatsApp over our cell phones. And if she plugs in her cell phone directly into her router using a Ethernet to USB-C adapter, will she get better connection? And I'm not understanding, for me, what's the difference between going through the Wi-Fi or using the tower from AT&T for my cell phone. Who gives me better reception? And how that relates to a hotspot? Is that what the hotspot is? That's it. That's the only questions I have.
Okay, so you've got a question about Wi-Fi, wireless versus wired. Okay.
Hotspots.
Your cell tower versus Wi-Fi, and what hotspot question too. I think we might answer all of those. So let's go through and we'll see how well we do. Okay. Okay. Michael, you got your hand up. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Unmuted. Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about hooking up a wireless printer. My computer recognizes it, but it doesn't communicate. I realize that may be a printer problem, but I think I'm stuck where it's asking for an IP address. There are several local DNS and submasks, and there's like a hexadecimal address. It's just a real salad of confusion for me. So maybe mine is too specific to apply to everyone.
Well, we might cover some of those things. I mean, printers can be a troubleshooting, a problematic area sometimes because they sometimes get on Wi-Fi really easily, and other times they don't. And so there are some diagnostic tools and windows that we'll talk about that might be able to help you solve that too.
Okay, one additional question. I have recently installed what's called a mesh router. That is, it's a router that has there are three parts, three to stretch it throughout the house. What maybe Carol was talking about. So you plug it in to the main Ethernet cord, and then the other ones are plugged in around the house, and they all talk to each other. And wherever you go, the signal sort of comes from wherever it's needed, wherever it's the strongest. Does that make any difference? Would that make any difference on my printer because I have a mesh router?
It shouldn't, but you never know. Okay, with
Yeah,
technology, there's always a question where you never know. It's kind of like walking into a doctor's office and saying, you know, I have an upset stomach. A doctor is not immediately going to prescribe something for you unless they do an exam, right? And so part of it's a diagnostic process, and we'll talk a little bit about diagnosing some things and trying to get things set up. But usually there's a couple of troubleshooting tips that might help that we're going to cover before we finish up. Okay.
All right, doctor, just give me an OxyContin.
I'll send you the prescription, and you can pick it up at your local pharmacy. Okay.
Thanks. I'll just get it on the street.
Okay. All right. Laverne, you have your hand up.
Someone asked me a question the other day, and it's a simple question, I think. And they asked me what was the difference between Wi-Fi and internet, and is there a difference? And I didn't have an answer. I didn't know the answer to that.
Okay. Well, we'll go over that. I hope after, a few minutes we go into class, you'll be able to answer that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I do another class that goes into explaining the internet a little bit more, understanding the cloud, because that helps people understand what it is too. And a lot of people have never physically seen what the internet is made of. And so they don't really understand what's out there too.
Right. Because I don't really understand the cloud either.
I can sympathize with you. Yes. It's a lot of people would not admit that, but that is an honest answer. Yes. Yes. A lot of people don't understand the cloud. So I like to explain things to people because it helps me understand them better. So let me give home network, essentials a try here. Okay. And see where we got some people with a wide range of issues. And so you can see we're going to cover a lot of topics, but we got to start out with the basics so that you understand what it is we're going to be doing. Okay.
I don't understand the cloud either. And I don't know if somebody else is having this, but I keep getting, I'm on Google and I have a Galaxy S20, but I keep getting this pop-up that says switch to OneDrive. Otherwise my photos or something will be lost after, I think after the end of this month or something. Do I have to switch? Because I'm told that OneDrive is really a Microsoft's
right. OneDrive is a Microsoft product. That's not really something we go into in this class. There is a class about OneDrive, but I recommend that you call your cellular provider to see if they can give you support on that issue. Okay, because that's not really necessarily specific to networks that we're going to be covering today. Okay.
I understand. Yeah, I thought it was a
Sure.
question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let me let's help explain a few networks here, two terms about networking. So the first question obviously is, what is a network? Well, a network is a connection of computers. If you're, my generation or similar, it's something that may not be familiar with you, the networks were really invented in the late 60s, early 70s. So we're people that grew up in the age of computer networks. And anytime you connect computers together by cable or wireless, it's becomes a network. That's what it is that they're just connected devices, and they can communicate with each other, hopefully. So that's a basic of what a network is when you come, it's kind of like when you introduce two people at a party and they handshake and they get each other's contact information. They can become networked. It's like business networking at a mixer or a conference or something like that. People exchange information and then they can communicate with each other in the future. And so by getting computers connected, they can communicate with each other, and they have to speak the same language, and they have to be able to translate anything they might need to. So it helps to get them connected in some way. We network, and networks are really important because it moves data. I don't know if you remember the old days when you had to actually write a letter to someone and put a stamp on an envelope. Maybe some of you remember those days, right? When you used postage stamps. Well, we were sending files, a document, a piece of information to somebody. We would put it in an envelope and we'd put a stamp on it, we'd address it, and it'd go out to somebody and it would arrive a few days later. But before the telegraph, it took a long time to get messages around the world. So as we've gotten better at figuring out ways to send information, now we can send information over wires, and we've even figured out how to do wireless as well. Marconi, if you don't recall, he invented radio, or he's credited with inventing radio, and it was the first wireless form of communication. And we just take these things for granted that they work, but we're actually moving files on a computer or web pages or images and pictures if we're downloading Netflix or watching music or video. And we've eliminated a lot of physical media. I don't know if you still have a box full of VHS tapes anywhere in your home. Oh, yeah. Or a shelf full of CDs for music, or maybe some flash drives sitting around that you just don't use that are in a desk drawer. But we just don't use physical media so much anymore. We stream our music. We use, I don't know when the last time you bought a physical map was, but it's probably a little while ago. And in Southern California, we have this thing called Thomas Brothers Maps that would come out every year with this thick book that was about an inch thick with street maps, because the area was always growing and changing. Now we just tap on our phones and we get Google Maps or Apple Maps or MapQuest or something else. So the idea behind networking is that it has eliminated the need to actually walk up to somebody and hand them a floppy drive, or hand them a flash drive, or hand them a computer file or something like that. It's eliminated that physical media and made it much easier to move things over electric wires or through radio, which is essentially transmitting information wirelessly.
I used to work at Teletype on Touhy Avenue.
No kidding.
No kidding. Or had paper tape reader punches. And we used to have to report to the Commerce Department on the number of Telex and Twix equipment that we would sell every month.
Wow. See, I mean, a lot of people have never seen paper tape, punches and things like that. And remember the stock in the old movies, they have stock market tickers where people are pulling paper out, and to see the stock prices and things like that. They're all, based on paper tickers. And when teletypes were invented, that was just a real breakthrough, because now you could actually hit a key on a keyboard at one end of the wire, and the other typewriter on the other end of the wire would actually type the key that was pressed by one.
Communicating typewriters. And then we came up with something which was called a glass teletype. It had a tube
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. The glass teletype. There was, it wasn't called video or, or computer. It was glass teletype.
Model
So
40.
our communications have gotten more and more sophisticated as networks have improved. I mean, but so some networks already. You use them every day. And so it's not like you don't use networks. You are a network user every day. But I'm always curious about how things work. And so, but when you dial somebody's number on a telephone, somehow or another, their phone rings and you're able to talk to them on a telephone. Whenever you dial somebody's phone number on a cell phone, and cellular networks with cell towers can get you either a phone call, a text message, and they can even get you on the internet as well. And so electricity, if you heard anything about, or read anything about Texas's electric grid, you learned a lot about electrical networks. In most states, electric grids are connected across state lines. And so if there's a surge or a shortage, electricity, but when you plug in an electrical plug, you buy an appliance, say you buy a coffee maker at a store and you bring it home, you're almost 100% confident that you can plug it into any electrical outlet you have in your home, aren't you? I mean, it's like, what if they sold different plugs for different appliances? A few of them do, like some things are 220 volt and most things are 110 volts. And so we just assume that a lot of these things work automatically. And then radio and television, they're networks. I mean, they're networks, they communicate and transmit information wirelessly. And you've seen microwave towers and other things that are out there that transmit things wirelessly. And so you're pretty familiar with networks already, even though you may not be familiar with what data networks are. Okay, and this is where people get confused.
Well, not to be a party pooper, because I love all these new innovations. I worked at Bell Laboratories, the research arm of AT&T, some years back. But lately, though, I have outages, and I was thinking most of this are dependent on electricity. So for driving, I still keep my old maps or GPS because the battery runs out, and I'm so afraid of having this like in the middle of a highway or something. My battery runs out and I can't do.
That's right. That's right. We depend. I mean, there's people that have never seen. I don't know if you ever watched the TV show NCIS. Anybody a fan of that? But there's an episode where the power goes out, and Gibbs starts pulling out old technology like a mimeograph machine. And so they can't send a photo and over the internet to all the people they need to send it to. So they get out a mimeograph machine and they make mimeo copies of things to distribute them. So understanding how things can back up. But yeah, we depend a lot on electricity to power everything, and we depend a lot on the internet to make things happen. I imagine this whole period of time with COVID and the pandemic and all the closures would be very different if we didn't have the internet, and had to find ways to communicate outside of electronic means.
Just ask a millennial to look something up in a phone book and you'll get that phone book. What's that?
Or things like a card catalog in a library.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technologies that are going by the wayside pretty fast, unfortunately.
I wrote a business case to have my boss come out with a printer that printed faster than 30 characters a second. And he wanted to know why we needed a printer that would print faster than we could read.
That's right. I remember having a conversation with somebody about 15 years ago about, eventually we won't, all of our photos will be on digital format. We won't have film cameras.
Yes,
I didn't know if that was going to happen, but it did.
Yeah, the card catalog at the Library of Congress, that's what we were doing. Now they think, and that was at the point where Lucia Rather and some of the Lenore Maria, they started work on the mark. a machine readable thing. And I really loved it because you didn't have to count dots and periods when we set up authority cards. It was, and it's so much easier when you just have a major word and you just put that in and you can pull out all the documents. They are there.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, let's get on with things. Let's cover some more technology. Ethernet is the standard technology for communicating with computers over cable or Wi-Fi. There are a couple of other data networks as well. Bluetooth, which you might be familiar with if you set up hands-free on your car. GPS, if you want to connect up to satellites, and maybe some home automation. Some home automation networks or specialized networks as well. Now, computers and devices are what you typically connect up to a network at home. A lot of devices are called smart devices because they might have a Wi-Fi or internet or Ethernet type of connection with them. But there's other devices like Amazon's smart home, Google's home, Apple TV, printers, tablets, everything. And these are all the devices that you're starting to hook up to your home network. They usually always connect through a central point called a router. Your router at your home functions as a central hub for your network. Now, for a larger organization, when you go out to the internet and you communicate out to the internet through your internet service provider, you're connecting to what's commonly called a data center. And it's a facility for computers. They're connected to the internet. They're owned by companies or organizations all over the world. And so that's where you end up getting to. And when you want to get there, or you want to get something back, you have to know a few pieces of terminology that the internet uses. One is called the internet. The internet is a collection of connected computers. So when you connect up to the internet, you go from your home through an internet service provider, and they give you the connection to the internet. So that's what the internet service provider's job is. That's why you pay them for doing it. Your cell phone carrier gets you through your cell phone signal to the internet as well, but you have a choice of which way you go, either through the cell phone or through a Wi-Fi connection. They will both work, okay? It just depends on, generally, Wi-Fi is faster but sometimes cellular is faster, but not usually. And it depends on how strong a signal. These are wireless signals. And so if you're far away from a cell phone tower, you'll have a weaker signal. If you're far away from your Wi-Fi router, you'll have a weaker signal. So Michael, I think, mentioned he put in what's called a whole house mesh network. And we'll talk a little bit about what prompted him probably to do that. Now, the addressing scheme with the internet is a uniform resource locator. This is the postal addressing scheme of the internet. Now, when you write a letter, you put a name, street number, street name, city, state, zip code on the envelope, and it gets deposited in a mailbox, and they know how to get it to its destination, right? And if you put a return address on it, if it doesn't get delivered, they can get it back to you if it's non-deliverable. Well, the internet uses a very similar scheme, only it's called URLs and IP addresses. URLs are what we understand as people. We understand things like google.com or getsetup.io, but computers prefer numbers. And so there are translation computers that translate URLs into IP addresses. And an IP address is a specific computer or device on the internet. It's called an Internet Protocol address. So every computer, every device has an IP address. Your router, your smartphone, your computer, your smart TV. I have a washer and dryer that are smart washer and dryer. They connect up to Wi-Fi. They don't do a lot with it, but they don't switch the laundry automatically. So that's the downgrade. It's not as smart as I'd like. But they connect up to the internet, and they give me alerts when it's time to clean, the washer and do and if I wanted to, I could have it give me an alert when the load is done. But IP addresses are like the addressing scheme of the post office, only on the internet. So every computer gets assigned an IP address. And what happens is routers are the devices that give out IP addresses and route them. So it's like a train station or a bus depot, so if you're looking to go from Kansas City to Oklahoma City, you get routed on a certain track. And the internet kind of does the same thing, only it's electronically done, and it's with numbers. And so one number gets you to a specific computer, whether it's your smartphone, your desktop, your laptop, or even Google, or Get Set Up. We're all IP addresses on the internet, and routers route the traffic. That's how they came up with the name router. Yeah, Carol.
Really fancy.
Okay.
This IP address, does it change like every day in the router, like whatever comes, or they always keep their same address for each device?
They don't always. Well, there's something called a permanent IP address, which is what companies like get with websites and data centers have. And then, but we only really need what are called temporary IP addresses. They are assigned to us by our internet service provider. And because we don't need to be on the internet permanently, but the internet knows
but they can't see me. I'm on mute.
So our address could change depending on where we're connected and when we're connected as consumers.
So Bob, I have a question. If you're in Gmail and I'm sending you a message and it comes back, message not delivered, is that the URL?
No, see that could be 4 or 5 different problems. It could be something wrong with the email address. Typically, because if gmail.com is a URL, it's owned by Google. It's just called gmail.com. And the @ just tells the internet that it's an email message instead of a www, a web page. Right. So somehow or another, that email didn't get to that address. More than likely, because Gmail is pretty reliable, more than likely it is an address problem where the person's address isn't correct, or there might be something else going on there.
Okay, thank you.
But the internet sent the message, your phone, your email application sent it to gmail.com. It got to an IP address where Gmail is run, and it's run in multiple locations. And then it sent you a message back telling you, hey, we couldn't deliver this. Okay. So it's like just like a physical letter. If you get a letter and you send it to an address and they can't deliver it, they return it and they say undeliverable, right? And funny things happen. Like if you don't, in the condo association I live in, if you don't put the apartment number or the unit number down for what, for where you want that letter sent to, it won't get delivered typically. So what we're doing all the time with networks is we're sending and receiving information all the time. And that's what networks do. They let us send and receive information. And the devices we have at home and most businesses and commercial uses use Ethernet. Ethernet is a computer industry standard. It was established in the early 1970s. And so standards like how many wires are in an Ethernet cable, what's the shape and size of the cable, what distance can we use for the cable. So when you buy an Ethernet cable at a store, it's an Ethernet cable. When you have an Ethernet jack on your computer, it's an Ethernet jack. It's just like plugging in an electrical outlet. It's just Ethernet, not electricity. And so the industries have created the standards. So one standard is wired, which is the cable, and the other standard is Wi-Fi, which is just wireless internet. Now, that's all it is. It's just wireless internet. Now it has specifications for frequencies, for other things, and routers are built to both handle wired and wireless. So this is where I get to draw a little bit on here, okay? So wireless routers have antennas, and they have Ethernet connection cables, and they have two types. And sometimes they have some other, but these are the network ones. One cable, like this one that's yellow, is for connecting a cable to your internet service provider. So if I had an Ethernet cable here, it would go out to my ISP. And sometimes, excuse the drawing skills, so sorry about that. Sometimes this router connects to a device called a modem. And sometimes your ISP gives you one box. You had either one box or two boxes from your internet service. A modem is simply a box that will convert this Ethernet to whatever the ISP wants going out to its wire from your home to wherever they run it, to wherever facility they run it to. It might be a coaxial cable, it might be a fiber cable, it might be something else, but the modem's job is to convert the message, this Ethernet connection to whatever the ISP uses. And like I say, some ISPs give you a single box, some ISPs give you two boxes. So you might have a modem and you might have a combined modem router, but you can replace your router as well. So these antennas broadcast Wi-Fi over two frequencies, and they have direct Ethernet ports for you to plug in. So if you're using your cell phone and you are on Wi-Fi, 99% of all cellular phones will automatically use Wi-Fi for communications if you are connected to Wi-Fi. Okay, so if you're using an internet application like WhatsApp or Maps or anything that, email on your phone, and you're connected to your Wi-Fi network at home, all of that communications is going to typically take place over Wi-Fi instead of cellular. Okay, but sometimes you might make a phone call and it'll go through cellular. It typically will, but even some providers let you make phone calls over Wi-Fi as well. So this is what a router does, and home routers are basically the hub of your home network. When you connect a smart TV, you're connecting it to your home router, usually with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has become more reliable, but the absolute best reliable format is to actually physically plug in a device to your router with a cable. That is going to be the most dependable connection for internet connectivity, because wireless is a little variable, but some Wi-Fi networks work really, really well. And of course, who wants to wire their whole house all over again, right? Okay, so the other thing about routers is that they get names, and some routers get names that are provided by your internet service. This is Spectrum's router. Sorry about that. Spectrum's router gives me a name, My Spectrum Wi-Fi 54-2G. It's called the SSID, but it's basically the network hotspot. Whenever you have a Wi-Fi router, it's also commonly known as a hotspot. It's the broadcasting name that takes place when a router is broadcasting its name. That's what the SSID part stands for. It is the broadcast signal. And some networks have a key that you have to use in order to log in. And routers usually have an IP address that's assigned to them that you can use to manage your router if you need to. But most internet service providers will manage your home router for you if it's provided by them as part of the service. So if you're looking to connect to a router, you basically have to find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how on my Wi-Fi settings on my phone real quickly. Hopefully we can make this work. And I'll just show you what's involved in getting on a router. Okay, there we go. There's my settings for my iPhone. So most of the time your Wi-Fi is managed in the settings app. But you see your phone has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cellular. They're different networks, okay? So right now, if I tap on Wi-Fi, it's on, but it shows a whole bunch of networks. See, that's the broadcasting signal that's taking place from my neighbors around me. I'm seeing their networks. But you see this little lock here, that means I have to have a password in order to use it. So, you know, I mean, it basically means that I've already logged into my network once, and so I've used it, and my phone remembers my password. Most of the time, your phone and your computer and your printer and other devices will remember the passwords you use for your network. However, if you change routers, you may have to go into your device and reset your device so that you forget the network and start off with the new network. Whenever you change routers of any kind, that's usually what has to happen. Because even though the router, it doesn't recognize the router. So usually in settings, there's a function for where you are able to say, forget this network. If I tap the I, you can see there's this setting, forget this network. Sometimes with I know someone mentioned, I think, Michael, you said you're having a problem with the printer. Try resetting the printer and setting it up on the network from as though it's a brand new network. That might get you back connected. Okay. But some printers, as they get older, they may not communicate. We don't always replace our printers that often. And sometimes their Wi-Fi technology doesn't get upgraded but as much as we might need to have it upgraded in order to work on our networks. They're trouble. I changed my router about 6 months ago. My printer always forgot my network, and I'd have to unplug it, plug it back in, and it would come back on the network again. But when I got a new router, since I've had my new router for 6 months, I haven't had a problem with the printer staying on the network all the time. So it's just a little bit, sometimes it's the communications between the devices. Now, if I turn my Wi-Fi off, I'm off Wi-Fi, but I'm still on cellular, okay? Because my phone has cellular capability in it too. But if I turn on Wi-Fi, it'll automatically connect back up to a network. I have 2G is the 2.4 gigahertz and 5G is the 5 gigahertz, same network. So I can just switch over. 5G is a little bit faster. And if I wanted to see how fast it was, I have a couple of speed testing apps here. They're free, and you're going to get a link. This is called Speed Test, Speed Check, Speed Smart. They're all about the same. Okay, so I'm just going to use the Speed Test one. They're free apps. They advertise a lot, so be careful about. But if I tap go, it's going to connect, and it says it has to find my network. So it's going to tell me how fast my download speed is on average and how fast my upload speed. So if you're wondering, gee, is my computer working fast enough? Am I on the network? Am I getting the speeds I should be getting? Just run usually ISPs have connections for speed testing as well, but this is the applications are free. Now I've upgraded my plan one level from the standard plan. I think it's about $45 a month, and I've upgraded it to like a $60 a month plan because I do a lot of Zoom meetings. And when you're Zooming or pushing things out to the internet, that's called uploading. When you're downloading is when you're pulling things down from the internet, like web pages, streaming, and other things like that. So I just wanted to show you, a few tips there for some things. Now, let's see what kind of questions we've accumulated so far, and then I'll go on to some things about ways you can extend your network and some tips for that.
Bob,
Yeah, Jocelyn, go ahead.
why do you have two networks, one at the 2 gigs and one at the 4 or 5 gigs, whatever it was?
It's like radio frequencies. It's like having two radio stations. You might have one an AM radio station and an FM radio station. The standard for wireless internet for Wi-Fi says it can broadcast on two frequencies, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So those frequencies are assigned by the Federal Communications Commission in the United States and other organizations worldwide. They are assigned specifically for wireless internet radio communications. And the reason is originally 2.4 gigahertz was what was the only one used. 5 gigahertz came later, but other things like microwave ovens broadcast really close to 2.4 gigahertz, the frequency in a microwave. So sometimes if you're standing next to your microwave oven or you're nearby it, sometimes you might get a little Wi-Fi interference from that. And so a lot of other devices also use that 2.4 gigahertz, but only Wi-Fi uses 5. So it's a little cleaner connection without interference.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carol.
So real quickly, the pinging, the bigger the ping, is that going to affect your download speed or upload speed?
Well, a ping is a term that's used to tell you how long it takes a internet message to get from you to its destination and back. So it doesn't necessarily affect how fast the data is moving. It affects things like how rough a connection might be, okay? But usually most of the time, streaming apps and other apps account for a wide range of internet connectivity issues that's built into the software. And so, I mean, I make WhatsApp calls, for example, to my son in Spain, and sometimes the image will freeze. Okay, you may have been on Zoom calls where sometimes the image freezes or something. That could be, it's more likely in the ping as opposed to the download or upload speed, but it could be, it's like diagnosing it could be a little bit of effort to figure that out. Sometimes a router upgrade will take care of it. Sometimes a call to your internet service provider saying, I'm having problems with this application, or getting slower speeds than I think I should be, can help solve it too. Yeah, Bob.
Admittedly, I have a couple-year-old router from my ISP, and I find that when I use the 5G part of the network, it doesn't seem to be much faster than the 2G, but it does seem to be not as stable. Is that typical, or is that just because I have a couple-year-old router or something like that?
It's not uncommon. 5G does not have the range of 2.4G of the gigahertz. So 5G communicates a little bit shorter. I mean, I'm in my home office and my router's at the other end, but it's like, 500 feet away. It's not far. And sometimes my phone will pick up 5G and sometimes my phone will pick up 2.4G. 2.4G tends to broadcast a little stronger signal. The thing is, on these routers, the Federal Communications Commission, in order to make sure wireless doesn't bombard us with a lot of radio waves, they restrict how much power that router can use to broadcast a signal. Unlike a big AM radio station on top of a mountaintop that can have a lot of power broadcasting the signal, our Wi-Fi routers have a very, very little amount of broadcast signal power, so they can't broadcast very far. So when you have a larger home, you have to think of solutions. How do I extend that network beyond where it is? And sometimes an extender might help you in terms of getting that more reliable and switching over. So let's take.
Had
Go
been
ahead.
thinking that Wi-Fi was primarily for in-house, but as you pointed out, and as we can see, we get Wi-Fi signals from all other neighbors coming in.
Now,
Is that-
some situations where a neighbor signal stronger than mine. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, because their router is closer to where I am in my home.
But typically, if you're outside of the house, I would go to the cellular network rather than trying to pick up somebody's Wi-Fi whose the password. I
Well,
wouldn't
you
know.
got to have their password, right?
Yeah.
Or you do something like go to a garage, or get this, or go to an extender or something like that. There's three general ways to extend Wi-Fi. That's a common problem, is that you've got a router and one end of your of where you live in the building, and you may wander around and you may notice weak signals. So these are the kind of the three budget ranges. This is typically a single Wi-Fi range extender is under $50. A power line range extender that uses your electrical power circuit in your home. You can actually run Ethernet over AC power lines. And they're about 100, and then a whole mesh network, which is what you can do to broadcast the signal all over your home. They come with 3 or 4 little pods like this that connect or replace your router. These are in the $200 to $400 range. Now, if you just need to get Wi-Fi to one location, and you get a signal, you can kind of do this, use the Wi-Fi range extender. You plug it into the wall, it picks up the signal from where it's picking it up, and then it rebroadcasts it. So it can it's kind of like a relay race. It kind of, pushes it further out. And a whole house mesh network basically is multiple range extenders, but they're all hooked up together and they all synchronize with each other. A power line range extender gives you the ability to plug one box next to your router, plug it by Ethernet into one of the cable connectors on your router, and then plug another box into another outlet anywhere in your home. And then you can use an Ethernet connection on the bottom of this one to connect up to your computer by wired. So it actually extends a wired connection without having to run Ethernet cables all through your home. And these are great devices. I use this, I've used this, and I've used this. And sometimes being able to plug in your Ethernet, your internet connection, is a great way to improve its reliability and capability. So cables are still a good solution. So I usually go to a website called Wirecutter for recommendations on technology, but it's hard. There's just a lot of different technologies out there, and Wirecutter will. Let me see if I can pull up the browser screen here. I've got. Yes, I do have it ready. I'm smart today. Got prepared for this meeting. Okay, so on speed test, here's Wirecutter. They're going to be in the email handout, but I'm also going to put them in chat for you too. They're owned by the New York Times, but they are really, really good in terms of evaluating products. Consumer Reports I use also, but Consumer Reports doesn't handle as many lower end price range products. They'll handle computers and they'll do them great. They don't accept any advertising. They're a nonprofit and they're free through libraries. But in the networking section here on Wirecutter, they'll tell you about power line adapters. They'll explain VPNs. They have gear to get reliable Wi-Fi anywhere in your home, recommendations for routers, recommendations for mesh networking kits. So that they have best Wi-Fi extenders, and they explain a lot of things too. So if you click on something and you say, what's the best Wi-Fi range extender? you can find, which one they want. These are under $30 now. And why they recommend it, why and they have a couple of different recommendations. They say if you want to spend more, you can get a really, another one, but it's pricey, so you can spend 170 or you can spend 30 and get something that's probably just as good. But their networking information is really good, I found. It's educational as well, and we always need to learn a little bit more. Now, sometimes when people have problems, okay, so we've talked about a hotspot. A hotspot is simply another term that somebody gives to a router's Wi-Fi broadcast. So you might see a coffee shop that says, free Wi-Fi, or they might say hotspot. It means the same thing, okay? When you've got cellular, you can be on the internet, but your phone or most of your devices will tend to prefer to use the Wi-Fi connection instead of cellular. Mesh routers, we talked a little bit about as they're a way to get a range extended, and sometimes printers and other devices become problems. When I replaced my router, I had to reset the network settings for all of my devices. I don't know why, even though I use the same network name and everything and stuff, but for my TV, my cell phone, my computer, my washer and dryer, I had to reset. I just had to reinitialize the network on all of them. And even though I use the same network name and password, so sometimes that happens. The other time, I think that can happen too, is that sometimes somebody might tell you, well, what's going on? So how do you diagnose problems on networks? Well, if you have more than one device, like say you've got a laptop and a phone, does your laptop connect up to the Wi-Fi network? Or does your phone, or are they both working? Or is there a problem with one or the other? If the problem, you're trying to isolate where the problem is on a network, because there's the cable, there's the Wi-Fi, radio signal, there's your connection to your internet service provider. So if you were getting, say, a dramatically different Wi-Fi speed on your laptop from your phone, it could be a number of things. For example, it could be, if they're both in the same location, it could be the fact that maybe your phone has a more up-to-date Wi-Fi antenna than your laptop. Okay, if you don't know, so even the antenna can make a difference, the physical antenna, because they've improved over time. And so if you buy a new phone, it'll have the latest antenna. But if you have a 4-year-old computer, it'll have a 4-year-old antenna and the circuitry that supports that antenna as well. So you might see some differences, but you really don't need more than about 4 or 5 megabits per second per device for downloading for things to work right. But if you have more devices, each device needs its own. If you're running, say, if 3 people are streaming Netflix and they're all streaming different movies in the house at the same time, you need 3 times the capacity of the network. You're splitting it up. It's like a pizza. If you have a pizza for one, you're the only person that has to figure out how the slices are going to go. But if you have a pizza for 5 or 6, you got to split it up and make sure people take only their fair share and don't eat it all up before other people get a slice, right? Okay, so that's some things about devices. So always check the network settings in a device. Forget the network, log off the network, and then reset the network. Sometimes power cycling devices, power cycling your computer or printer or smartphone or smart TV can sometimes, set it up on, get it reconnected to the network, because maybe it's just been connected for so long and there's some little software glitch that occurred, and just power cycling it resets all the settings and get you connected back to the network. And then you'll hear that a lot from technical support people. Now, sometimes you have to cycle down, you have to power off everything, your router, your modem, and every device you have connected to the network, and reset and then turn them back on. And it's better to turn on the modem first, then the router, and then all of your different devices. Sometimes power cycling everything makes it. But usually when you've got a connectivity problem with a change of equipment, it's a device that just doesn't recognize the network, even though the settings might have been the same. So power cycling is a very common, recommendation by technical support people. And most internet services now can tell you if you're getting a really good speed to your home, and realistically, routers, they can go 2, 3, 5 years before they need to be replaced. But sometimes they might have what's called a firmware upgrade, which usually fixes a security problem as opposed to anything else, but they don't come out anywhere near as often as computer software issues do, because there may be once every 2 years you might get a firmware upgrade that's possible. Most routers now automatically upgrade as well. And if you're having a problem, call your internet service provider. They're responsible from their equipment to make sure it works. Okay, so let's take a few questions before we wrap up today. Yeah, Bob.
I've seen some ads where some of the higher end cars are offering Wi-Fi inside the car. Why is that necessary, and what does that do?
Well, I mean, if you're a mobile worker, you can get, it's basically satellite, either wireless through cellular or satellite. We can get Wi-Fi on airplanes. And a friend of mine actually works for a satellite company that provides Wi-Fi services to things like oil rigs and trucks and other things like that. But yeah, if you want, you can get satellite-based Wi-Fi, and it just depends on how much you really need Wi-Fi. Don't forget, you'll be able to connect to the internet over cellular. So if you're driving in your car and you've got a cellular connection, it's just a matter of whether the data plan is better one way versus another, depending on what you do.
Yeah, I assume that Google Maps and the rest, when I use it in my car on my phone, go through the cellular network without me having the option to do that.
Yeah, it's going through cellular, and as long as you've got good cellular connections, they're typically on the roads everywhere in most places. And as long as it's the plan is good enough for you, they're pretty good speeds for most of the time.
So you don't hear much about roaming anymore.
Well, most of the networks, the cellular networks, you do hear more about it internationally than domestically. Yeah. So you do hear about more but not too many people are traveling outside the country right now. So you don't hear a lot about that. Okay, so let's see, we've taken a look at Wi-Fi, cell towers, hotspots, wired. Wireless printers, they're annoying. There is a setting, a troubleshooting tool in Windows that if you go to settings and devices, you can find troubleshootings for troubleshooting printers and you can also find network troubleshooting tools for Windows as well. Oddly enough, Macs don't have as many troubleshooting tools, but they once you're connected, it seems to work pretty well no matter what. So those are some issues with that. Then mesh routers, it's really going to depend on the mesh provider, but sometimes when you change your network devices, resetting devices on the network really make a big difference in terms of getting back on. I was just kind of going through questions that we had. Okay, so we went a little bit over today. Sorry about that, but hopefully we covered a lot of material about some network ABCs, routers, Wi-Fi, internet, some tips for solving problems, getting around your network. Networks are, a very, interesting topic to go into that can really take a long time to learn about. There's learn about the Drive classes, Google Drive, OneDrive, iCloud. I do a class that kind of explains the cloud a little bit. The Windows 10 settings, I go into some of the troubleshooters for troubleshooting that are built into Windows if you use Windows 10 operating system. And I do kind of an odd class once in a while on live or retire abroad, because I was doing that for a while, and Get Set Up convinced me to do a class on that. You're going to get some notes in class. You get links to some of the speed tests and Wirecutter things. Give us some feedback. Recommend, there's a new tool. We have recommend this class to a friend. So if you do get notes and you think you'd like to let people know about what's going on, and you can even invite a friend, to when you register for the class, and so you can see some familiar faces. So let me just wrap up and see what other questions we might have before we say goodbye to each other, and I can get ready for my next class today. Anybody have any questions that we still need to take care of today? Well, hopefully you learned something new about networks. Yeah, Carol?
Just really fast, it may have nothing to do with this, but when I'm driving down the street and I have Xfinity and I want to not use my cell tower, I have an app that it says it finds all the Xfinity hotspot. Is there something else I should be looking for instead of that app?
No, if you're a lot of the cable and wireless service providers, I know AT&T has something similar. They provide internet services through a lot of organizations and a lot of locations. The cable companies have kind of a network of Wi-Fi hotspots all over the country. And so that's an app that will help you find hotspots that are you're already paying for as part of your cable internet connection plan through Xfinity. Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. And hopefully we'll see you at another class soon, and learning a little bit more about technology, okay?
Thanks, Bob.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Bye, everyone.
Everybody take care.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a great
Take
day.
care.
Okay.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.